Guardians, it's really swung.
I'm resident of Collinwood for YouTube. Jules Sades. It's my buddy Patrick McCray. It's my buddy Gordon Dymowski. Oh my God. We're here to talk Dark Shadows 887.
Maybe.
The
Maybe.
Leviathan arc has started an episode ago in 886. In this episode we learned Oberon and the one lady who is with him. I find this interesting because in the previous episode before this, 886, Barnabas, before we hear this guy's name of Oberon, he recognizes the guy. He's like, you. So here's my question, guys. And is there any chance that Dark Shadows is going to find a way to explain how Barnabas recognized Oberon?
Just the VFW. The hall.
Yeah, and Jewel, after he goes he then asks, "Who are you?"
So it's not like you? Who are you?
I know he asked, "Who are you?" But he also looked like I'm not saying he knew his name, but he recognized him like he saw him before. He said you like he saw him before.
Maybe Oberon's first name is Hugh. H-U-G-H, and that's what he's saying.
Wasn't there a famous actor named Hugh Oberon?
That's right.
This episode's narrated by Nancy Barrett, written by Sam Hall, directed by Leila Swift. So the Leviathan arc has started. By the way, Dennis Patrick is not actually in this episode. It's somebody else doing the moving around of the character we see in the jacket, the long overcoat, or if you will. So we're not going to get Dennis Patrick quite in this episode. One of my favorite parts about this episode is when Julia is hearing voices of the past, and she hears Pansy Faye, and she hears Magda. I really love this because they do this neat trick with the camera where she's hearing the voices and she's flashing between Barnabas's portrait they're flashing between Barnabas's portrait and Josette's portrait. And her conclusion to this is Barnabas is dead, which anytime I watched this episode and watched it back this week, I'm like, that's sort of shocking that she come to that conclusion. Why do you guys think that Julia was sort of jumping to that conclusion?
That it was who?
She thought, well, when she was hearing the voices from the past, she heard two distinct voices from the past. She heard Pansy Faye and Magda. And they kept saying about Pansy Faye had gone to Magda. You could hear the voices. They don't show this. You hear it through Julia Hoffman. She's hearing the voices. And they saw Barnabas and Josette go into the house and they disappeared together. And Magda goes, I don't know nothing about that. And that's what she tells Pansy Faye. And as this is going on and Julia's hearing this, they have a moment where they're flashing between Barnabas's portrait and Josette's portrait. And Julia Hoffman concludes she comes to the conclusion that Barnabas is dead. And I always with this episode specifically, I always wondered, why did Julia sort of jump to that conclusion?
I don't know, but I think she needs to mind her own business.
Yeah, you have to keep in mind at this point, Julia's been back from 1897 for a month.
Yeah, that's true.
And she's kind of dealing with some stuff. So I don't think she jumps to that conclusion because of anything inherent in the story. I just think she's still shell shocked. She's still kind of, we don't know what effect time travel has. I don't think it's a case of I don't think it was intentional, as in, okay, well, she thinks Barnabas is dead. I think she's just still kind of out of it.
Yeah.
I know the feeling.
Mm-hmm.
I found it very interesting. I do think, like, you're right, Julia has been back like a month. And she keeps wondering when Barnabas is coming back, and she's starting to doubt, will he come back? That's sort of in her mind too. She's wondering if Barnabas is just trapped in the past permanently.
Yeah, like Beetle.
So, right, she's starting to, and that's where she hears those voices. She starts hearing the voices, and so her mind is, maybe Barnabas is just dead. It could be. Who knows? She doesn't know. She's left to assume. And I love this little thing they're doing with her because, number one, it creates doubt in her mind. I mean, this is what I mean by we, the audience, might know what's going on, but the characters don't because they didn't see what happened. They didn't see what happened to Barnabas. They didn't see the situation between those strange characters that had appeared to Barnabas back in his own time. So Julia is just left to wonder what happened to him. Is he dead? He could be dead. And they're playing with that with this episode, which I like, to build the suspense of the characters. And Julia actually mentions the antique shop. I love how we get a brand new antique shop where they're going to discover the portrait of Charles Delaware Tate. I think it's not this episode, but in the next couple episodes after this, if not the next one, is where Professor Stokes is working with Sabrina. I want to say Sabrina Stewart, I think is her name, which is the one guy's sister.
Ned.
Yeah, Ned Stewart's sister. Sorry, I forgot his name. Played by Roger Davis. I do remember Roger Davis played.
Ned Stewart's sister is played by Roger Davis.
Oh, Ned Stewart's played by Roger Davis. Oh my God.
Well, how's he also play his sister?
They use split screen, Patrick. Good old fashioned split screen.
Yeah. What did you guys think of how the Leviathan is represented in this episode?
It was fine. I had some thought about when Oberon says, I'm not going to be there much. I have to visit you through your dreams. Is the commute, is it a problem with the commute? If Oberon could have shown up, how would he have tried to play it nonchalant with that kind of look?
No.
Would he show like in a pork pie hat and a Hawaiian shirt, I'm just a tourist in Collinsport. Where can I find Rumaki? Does Blue Whale also have Manhattan-style clam chowder? Just playing it off. Would Oberon have worn sock garters?
Or would he be like all kind of freaky, psychedelic, like that kind of early 70s casual wear kind of look?
It's too obvious. I think Oberon would not have gotten the fashion memo yet.
I like the fact that we get an altar. We get this snake altar looking thing. I do have a way they could have explained the whole Oberon thing, because the Twilight Zone did this with Rod Serling, or CGI of Rod Serling. The Blurry Man episode, where every episode had the Blurry Man in it, where you couldn't. Well, who was that?
Like you have your glasses on. Every episode is like that if you don't have your glasses on. Have you looked at that Leviathan symbol lately? Have you looked in the center of it, the part of the snake that goes up?
Yeah.
What's it look like, Jewel?
Well, does it matter what it looks like?
Yes, it does. They're putting a Winkus right there on TV, and you're giving it a pass.
A what?
You're saying it's okay to
what?
This in front of children. A member of the male persuasion, Jewel.
Yeah, and
look at that. Look at their logo again.
Yeah, and at one point, I think it's like Oberon or Barnabas at that scene talks about, which comes from our hands and our loins. I mean, it's,
Yeah.
I mean, it's there, Joel.
Haza also. I'm serious. Somebody in the art department was having a pretty naughty night because Haza also is wearing the bondage, like the S&M symbol, the sort of like the curly Q that goes in three different directions on her tunic. Joel, look it up. I'm
Yeah.
serious. There's some weird subtext going on there with the costuming that they didn't see back then.
Yeah, but one thing that I personally don't think is context is Barnabas saying you to Oberon. I think that might have just been like a Frid gaff. Like he instead of saying who are you, he just thought to do you because he's so used to it.
Well, oh wait, I figured it out. No, I know how this happened because I'm serious about this. When he's talking to them in this episode, as opposed to the last episode, uh, it's after the ceremony, and he's probably in
No.
1970, 1969 or 1970. So it's like, it's you. I wasn't dreaming. You're still here, and I think that's what it was.
Mm-hmm.
Or he could have been
Okay.
going, you.
Well, he in the previous episode to this one, he sees
Yeah.
the girl after he thinks he's lost.
Yeah.
He's like, "Can I be lost? I've traveled this path how many times?" And he sees the girl first. And when he turns around, that's when he sees Oberon. He goes, "You." And it's again, could it be, just Jonathan improvising? I don't know.
I think I think he just maybe flubbed a line or something.
Yeah, that's it. The simplest is the best.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because see, Joel, this is like back to the is Collinwood alive question. It's sort of back to no, seriously, because a plot element that significant is going to show up elsewhere. There's too much to get out of that. And Dark Shadows is not exactly a spice ball of nuance. So it's not really there to drop hints. We got as much as I like to, figure out what are potential connections and so on. It's all got to have a payoff. So like here's the way I like to sort of look at connections and things within Dark Shadows. What are all the hints that Barnabas might give that he's actually in love with Angelique, despite himself? Where can we see? Because we know that's a payoff coming. So where do we see those moments in his interaction, even if he's not aware of it? Those are the sorts of things. Is Vicky that dopey, or is she purposefully trying to sort of play dummy to avoid suspicion? You grow up in that girl's home. I'm totally serious. Your secrets are all you have. So I kind of wonder. I almost wonder if her diary, where we're getting my name as Victoria Winters things, is not the real diary, but it's left specifically because she knows that David and probably Carolyn, and it's like the episode of Gillian's Island where they're all reading Gillian's diary. I think probably everybody goes into Vicky's room at some point to read the diary and see what she's saying about them.
Yeah. I just think it's really interesting that, again, in the prior episode to this, that he doesn't say it to the girl. He says it to the guy, like when he turns around. I just find it interesting. That's all.
They might have run into each other in the bus station men's room, or I don't know. Things happen. You got
or these supernatural creatures anonymous, meaning you don't know.
Maybe he recognized him through his Grindr profile. It could be anything.
Yeah.
I did go back and look at the altar thing. Yeah, okay, I see it now. But okay, honestly, so what?
Well, no, it's not. I mean, it's interesting. It's not like they're bad. It's a snake cult.
Well, think of it this way. This is, let's see.
You've often started conversations related to this topic with the words, think of it this way.
Think of it this way. This is many, let's see. Alien's going to happen in 78, 79. So, which is about, pardon my language, creatures, mouth fucking strangers, So, there's that.
Yeah. What if he had sat on the egg?
Wait.
What if he cracked the egg open, ate it, and scrambled it and ate it, for breakfast? We don't know.
I think Kane thought there was going to be like white marshmallow cream inside with a little bit of yellow marshmallow cream.
Yeah, like a Cadbury egg.
He's an Englishman.
Yeah.
What did you guys think of Dr. Julia Hoffman in this episode? Her having keep hearing the voices, because she talked about that in this episode.
It's an interesting nuance that, because we've talked about the fact that her time travel technique is pretty weird. Barnabas is strange enough, but she just projected herself back there. So, the continuum of Julia's awareness may still be, trailing behind. Mm-hmm. He said, like Deepak Chopra, thus knowing nothing about what he was talking about.
Yeah, and plus at some point the writers have to bring that storyline to an end. And so it's a way to kind of touch base and go, yeah, we're 1897, we're done, folks. Things are going to get even darker and grimmer and weirder. And sexier.
So we see this figure lurking around Collinwood. It's not Barnabas. We see him wearing black gloves. When you guys first saw this episode, who did you think that was before they revealed who it was?
Well, the hint is that it's Barnabas, but then the tell that it's not is that he doesn't have the Inverness cape. So I didn't really know.
Yeah, it's
and because they didn't get Dennis Patrick for this episode, I think they just got, Timothy Gordon or somebody. Now in the next episode, where they retread this, it is Dennis Patrick.
Mm-hmm. They got Mark Aldry as Paul Stoddard.
Okay, the other white meat.
Yeah, they didn't pay him in money. They paid him in craft services. They bought him lunch at the commissary.
It says uncredited. So, but I will say this: I like the way the character moved in this episode, because they didn't try to give you too many hints of who the character. I knew it wasn't Barnabas. They give that's enough of a hint. Barnabas there's no cane, there's no mood ring, there's none of the Barnabas attire on him. So it's not Barnabas, but the way the character moved, they didn't try to tell you who it was. But the one hint, I thought that maybe they were gonna the hint they had here. I know that's it. This is not who the character is. When I saw the black gloves, I thought this was Patofe, because Patofe wore black gloves, and I'm thinking, did he switch? Because it was you could tell it was a thinner stature. I'm like, did Patofe swap bodies somehow? We know he could do it.
Out.
I think the effect that we're going for was there's a strange guy lurking around the old house. He's got a hat. You see a glimpse of a mustache and black gloves, and I think it's the show's way of trying to. They're transitioning into a new storyline, and it's
Nicholas Blair. Gloves, mustache, coat, Nicholas Blair.
Yeah, they could have been just as easy, but it's a transitional episode, and sometimes you don't get it's less about the big splashy climax moment and more about, okay, we need to get to point A to point B, but it does a really good job in getting from point A to point B.
Yeah. What's you guys' favorite scene in this episode?
I kind of like the stuff with Carolyn, because it's a very transitional Carolyn. Carolyn's character is going to get more and more depressed and dark as this goes on, and they're really laying the groundwork to redefine who she is. Yeah. Her hair is different. They really, this is Carolyn 2.0, 3.0, really.
I really like the stuff at the beginning at the altar, mostly because I think since they were going for that kind of neo Lovecraft vibe, and Lovecraft was not in the public consciousness as much as he is now. I think they really were able to hit that kind of creepy, low level, that kind of low level dread in that early scene.
Here's an interesting question about that. Lovecraft was so obscure, and there's really no evidence that Hall or Russell were big horror readers. I mean, they were readers of the classics, and if the classic happened to be vaguely horror oriented, terrific. But you notice, really when Sam and Gordon take over, it's very original stuff. They're no longer doing this turn screw ghost thing. The ghost in Turn of the Screw is called Quint. Quentin. That's all Art Wallace type material. And, I guess that's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, but I think that's maybe the last of the, old horror shout outs. Now they're doing their own thing. So where I was going with that is, were Sam and Gordon, and certainly Alan Dean Curtis was reading Lovecraft. Were they aware of Lovecraft, or is it just something that's coincidentally kind of Lovecrafty?
I think Lovecraft at that time would have been a little bit more in the you had to know someone, and maybe in the occasional research book. So I could see them reading a book on the Boys' Book of Horror, and go, okay, Lovecraft talked about cosmic horror, strange cults, and they go, okay, we can do that. So I don't think it's, hey, because really the Leviathan arc really isn't Lovecraft, if you think about it in its pure form. I think they kind of, essentially, if they had created it now, they would have looked at the Wikipedia article. I think they just kind of looked at an article that said Lovecraft did this and said, let's do that.
The good Lovecraft storytelling from around this time is the episode "What Are Little Girls Made Of" on Star Trek, because they have Brooke even talking about the old ones and so on and so forth.
This isn't an answer to your question, but can I read something?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. What is the Leviathan? The tale of Leviathan has been a source of curiosity among many Christians and non-believers alike since the inception of the creature was expressed in the pages of the Bible. Leviathan is known to be a fearsome primordial being that ruled over all other creatures of the sea. There are varying descriptions of the origins and intent of the creature in history. Though most would agree that Leviathan is dangerous and capable of terrifying destruction, the Leviathan is known to be an enormous sea monster that was one of Uith's, the Christian god, original creations. There were several other creatures of equal power that were created. Now, I want to say this. When they put up Leviathan, they have a picture of fucking Godzilla on this shit. But the Leviathan was known to be the most dangerous of them all. There are many different theories to what inspired the tales of the Leviathan, but most
they used to. See, the Leviathan in this case is kind of like what they did with Laura and the Phoenix. It's like, okay, it's a biblical reference, it's a mythological reference. They just said, okay, I'm sure Sam was like, okay, go to the Bible. What cool names? Pharisees, no. Leviathan, yeah, let's call it that. the Lovecraft stuff was probably because it's not really Lovecraftian, but it's what you would think if you read a book about Lovecraft, what Lovecraftian stuff is. In fact, there's a whole episode later on where they kind of had to go, well, it's not really Lovecraft, it's a cult, it's and around this time there were a lot of, the mid to late 60s are a lot more kind of weird Satan witchcraft worshiping kind of freaky kind of movies. So that's probably what they were tapping into more.
Yeah, had Rosemary's Baby been made yet?
Rosemary's Baby was 68.
So yeah, Church of Satan, founded in 1966, on the cover of Look magazine. So yeah, that stuff was around, and it was before the Satanic Panic. A dark time.
If Leviathan is anything, and this is just my opinion, more than happy to argue at a later time, it's Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Yeah.
It's basically you're either on one side or the other.
It's sort of the Thing also.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Are you or aren't you?
Yeah, the novel was out well by this time, wasn't it? Yeah.
It was. Yeah, this is another weird thing in this Leviathan storyline, is that Oberon and Hayes are clearly, kind of running the show, and yet they're referring to Barnabas as their boss.
Yeah.
And it's like, wait, guys, which is it? I really don't think there was maybe a thorough plan. I think it was sort of, let's just see where this goes.
Yeah, because when you look at the length of the 1897 storyline, you could tell that there's probably some point where they just said, do we really want to go back to the present? No, we want to stay here. And I think that's why it's so long. But now that they're going into the present, it's like, okay. And they're heading into a time that's a lot more. 1897 happened during most of 68 and 69, where country was very tumultuous, a lot of dark times. So you're entering, and so I could see Sam and Gordon going, you know what, and Violet to some extent, you know what, why should we write about the present? We'd have to deal with all the, I don't want to deal with the present. Let's stay in this nice contained historical setting. I'm sure when Dan Curtis, started waving his golf club and saying, no, we need to move on.
They're like, relevant.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that, I don't think it was conscious, but I think a lot of that just kind of weird. Because also keep in mind, Sam and Gordon were in their 40s by this point. So they're not part of the counterculture at all. They're kind of perceived as, they're looking at these kids and going, what the hell is going on? And so that's what's starting with the Leviathan sequence. And
a lot of Manson family stuff. A lot of, trust the youth leader kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's like, well, what if we had Buzz Hackett, but we took him seriously? I mean, you and I take him seriously, of course, but,
What if Dark Shadows took Buzz Hackett seriously?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, here's a fun question for you. You can do, if you could have put anything in place of the Leviathan arc, what would it have been?
In the dark, like just Monster of the Week kind of thing.
Just like if you could have replaced the story with the took a story and replaced it instead of the Leviathan arc, you get that story. What would you have put there?
From Dark Shadows?
Yeah.
Oh, I just would have skipped to, I would have had them when, they're escaping 1897, they wind up in 1995. It might have just been one of them.
Yeah.
And then they come back and they have to avert this ending, and then Quentin shows up even more vulnerable. And he's in a perfect position to be kind of seduced by Daphne because he's weird over Amanda Harris and all this other unfinished business.
I think if I had to do another storyline other than Leviathan, and this is stretching it a little bit, I would have done some variation of the Island of Dr. Moreau, but have it in Collinsport and have it be like the Return of Petofi, where he's the one doing these weird surgical, magical experiments on people to turn them into animals.
Yeah.
Oh, that would have been a real Nicholas Blair type of plot. You know, once again, trying to create a master race.
Well, you could see like Blair trying to be like Petofi's flunky, and Blair resenting it because Petofi had the idea first.
Real interesting that, you know, he's sent first to kind of crash Eric Lang's party, and Eric Lang is not expecting it. So, you know, there's all sorts of stuff they can do there, even though the times don't sync exactly. You see what I mean? So now it's like, okay, Petofi's doing these experiments, crash his party. But it's a very different situation.
Cool. Is there anything you guys want to add about episode 887?
No, it's all in the chat.
Gordon, is there anything you want to add?
Nothing that I can think of.
Okay. Let's see. I think it's Patrick's turn to pick.
It is. Why don't we do the episode where not Paul Stoddard. Who's his buddy?
Jason McGuire.
Jason McGuire gets strangled.
Okay.
And we put the period on that particular storyline.
Okay. Is it tomorrow good for you guys?
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, I'm good.
That's fine.
Okay, tomorrow at 10:30. All right, link to Patrick McCray's Dark Shadows Daybook Unbound is going to be the description box. Link to Gordon Dymowski's Amazon page is going to be the description box. Go pick those up if you guys haven't. Gentlemen, I'll see you tomorrow night. Have a great night.
Good night.
Sniff wisely.